Have you heard anything about this activity increasing at all?
Yes, it's increasing. The numbers show it. This delusion is called the strong delusion for a reason. This is not just going to be a fly-by-night event.
Right.
This is going to be an end of life event.
Joe Jordan is a well-known speaker in the field of ufology. He's a veteran MUFON director and has been recognized for asking the right questions that have proven repeatable results in stopping abduction attacks. He is also a Christian, which is why I featured him in my latest documentary called Starfall on this channel. We are lucky to speak with him tonight personally in his home in South Korea. Joe, thank you for being on the program tonight. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my professional background, I'm a safety specialist working for an American contractor supporting the U.S. military here in South Korea. That's kind of how I ended up here. That's my professional life. And I have been in that profession for about 15 years now. I came out of Florida. I lived 40 years in Florida. Right after high school, my dad moved there, retiring from the military. I followed him there and kind of stayed there. Worked a lot of different jobs. I worked 24 years with the leading boat company in the world, Sea Ray Boats, and ended up having an opportunity to go from there across the river from where I lived and worked to the Kennedy Space Center, and got to put a few years in at the end of the space shuttle program up until the time it closed out. And then as it was closing out, I was looking for other opportunities again because everything was downsizing, and ended up taking a hold of overseas contract work. And at the time, my wife I had at the time, I ran it by her and I said, hey, how about taking an opportunity and seeing the world and let somebody else pay for it? And she thought that was great. We both grew up as military brats. Her dad was Air Force, mine was Army. So we had traveled a lot when we were younger, and we missed not being able to see the world. So we took full advantage of this opportunity to come over here as a contractor. Why Korea? It just happened to pop up. At the time, I was applying for overseas contract work. I was trying for the big money: Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait. The war zones were paying good money for contractors. Everybody needed a safety position, and I was only getting nibbles as I applied for the jobs. And then I had a recruiter from inside the company I was working for at the Kennedy Space Center posted a job for South Korea, and I thought, never thought of that, and looked into it a little deeper. And well, this was one place they didn't hate you and they didn't try and kill you. Families were welcome, pets were welcome, and I thought, well, the money's not as much, but it's security, and I can have family and everything else like a regular life. I'm supporting the military. I'm not in the military.
Civilian military.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, very good. So
Now, the connection with MUFON is, I had been a MUFON member since '93 and field investigator. I was a state section director for about 10 years for Brevard County, Florida, for MUFON, which means I ran my own chapter out of Brevard County. And that's where the Kennedy Space Center is located. It's where I live. Wow. And, when I moved over here to Korea, I thought, now what am I going to do? Am I going to just give this up, or does this continue? And that was one of the first things I looked into when I got here and got established in my job, as I started asking my new Korean friends, about the UFO subject. And it was interesting, the answer I got from them. It was right away. It was, we don't have time for that.
Oh.
And, that's a strange answer. What do you mean you don't have time for that? No, so we're busy. We don't have time for that. And it really puzzled me to try and understand what that really meant. And I thought it was maybe because of the, language difference. That was the answer they gave me. But the more I talked to these people and the more I tried to understand what was meant by that, I realized that they were giving me the right answer. And the reason they were saying that is because this country, is on fire to be the best in the world
Mm.
for technology and industry and business. And that's their focus. I mean, they are seriously focused. The kids here go to school 10, 12, 14 hours a day. So the parents are on fire to get their kids to that level.
Mm.
So they work and they work and they work. So this, I don't have time on my hands, goes like this. If you're a student, you don't have time. You're a student and you're full time until you're finished being a student. If you're a parent that's working, you work a lot of hours, and that's your focus is to get that income to get those kids through the best college you can get them to. And if you're a business owner, you're open long hours to make sure that, your business is going to be more successful than anybody else in the world. So yeah, they're busy. They don't have time to just dabble in crazy things on the internet, you know?
They see it as
Um,
a interesting distraction, in other
Yeah,
words.
exactly. If they're going to spend any time at all outside of what they're focused on, it's going to be family or close friends. But they're not sitting around on the internet looking at conspiracy theories and
Mhm.
strange things that they don't have answers for. No, they want answers now for the business and be successful.
Wow, wow, very work driven. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Totally opposite of the US,
Mhm.
We don't want to work long hours. We want more
Uh,
time off. We don't want the overtime, you know. Um, and we spend a lot of time wasted, on the internet, not with family, not like they are,
yeah,
you
how
know.
fast can I retire? That's basically the
Yeah,
mindset of American. Yeah, I get it.
exactly. So that leads to something very interesting that I learned right away. Um, I also looked into MUFON's reports on Korea, South Korea, over the years, and there was next to nothing. So, I had to really, really question that. And it seems to be there's quite a connection when you look at it that, this phenomenon is kind of based on time on your hands.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh, I never thought about that.
I
Based on
didn't
time in
either.
your hands. Huh.
So what does that mean? We'll talk about that as we get into it.
Actually, yeah, it ties in with a good question that I have down a little further. Do you have, I mean, I imagine that you've looked at a lot of reports. I don't know if you have done in-field stuff.
I
Um,
have.
you have, and you've probably talking to colleagues. I don't know if MUFON has conventions where they get together and discuss or anything,
Sure.
but um, do you have any memorable paranormal or UFO or UAP or abduction uh, stories that you can talk about? Like I know that these things are real, but and I don't want to reveal anybody's name, obviously, but
Sure.
I'm curious about the stories that you have.
You have no idea. uh, yeah. There's let me give you a couple good ones. Back when I first started, I started out with MUFON as a field investigator. Means I was following up on sighting reports. Sighting report would come in, we'd follow up with it as field investigators, go out, talk to the witnesses, gather as much information as we can so we could put some kind of determination on what these people were seeing. Well, I used to get some really good stories. When I was working at the boat company, I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning. We started work at 6, but we got off at 3:30. And the reason for that is we didn't have to go into the extreme late hot hours of the day during the summer. Gave us an opportunity to get the work done during cooler hours. Well, the shift that I was working, that day shift, I'd stop at the local, little 7-Eleven on the way into work, pick up something for a quick breakfast before I got in there. And it was right there in my neighborhood. And what was interesting was a lot of the third shift security was getting off at that time and from the Space Center. And third shift security were guys that we used to call them the Rambos because these guys were, since 9/11, security got really high on the Kennedy Space Center. And there was full-time contractors, civilians in military uniform, not military uniform, like paramilitary uniform, in four-wheel drives out in the boonies and Kennedy Space Center, secure in areas where people can't come in, because Kennedy Space Center is huge. It covers many, many square miles.
Mm-hmm.
It's a national wildlife refuge out there.
Hmm.
And it's hard to secure the whole area. So they had guys out there on third shift, with infrared and, everything else that they needed out there. Plus, they were weaponized. And I used to run into some of these guys coming in after third shift. Well, being that I'd lived there so many years, I knew some of them, and these guys had gotten hired, with a decent job out there, and they got stuck on that third shift. And it's kind of lonely out there. It's not busy out in the boonies, in the middle of the night. And they knew what I did in MUFON. And they said, I'm not going to give you on the record with this, but I'm going to tell you, we're seeing some crazy things out there, and I had to really step back and think about that, because this was the Kennedy Space Center. This is one of the most highly guarded airspaces in the world because of that shuttle program that was going on. And even still with the launches that they're still doing, the private launches and the Air Force launches right there at Cape Canaveral. So for these guys to be saying that they're seeing things in the middle of the night over the center, that would catch a lot of heads. But these are things they couldn't talk about to their own superiors, but off the record, they would tell me about it. So it was interesting to hear reports like that and some of the descriptions. One of the first crazy abduction cases that I can tell you about, really strange, was a gentleman that actually worked with me at the boat company. I had no idea he was having these types of experiences. We called him Hippie Bob. He was a old hippie type personality. And he was one of the biggest jokers about what I did with UFOs. He had the best jokes, and I could only laugh at him myself, because I know he didn't mean them. He was just being funny. But he always had them coming, always a new one about what I did. And then finally one day, I ended up going to second shift. I ended up getting a different position and was running the welding and fabrication shop at Product Development Engineering. And I was doing that on second shift. So my hours got changed where he was still on first shift. Well, he knew I was on second. And then one Monday evening, when I got home from work, about 11:30 at night, as soon as I walk into my house, I get a phone call. And it's Hippie Bob. And he's kind of upset. And he says, I'm really sorry I've ridiculed you all this time about what you do. And I said, why do you say that? He says, because I haven't told anybody this, but I've been having some experiences. And actually, I quite enjoyed them. They were like out of body experiences. And I would go places and, they were really enjoyable. But the reason I'm calling you is because they took a nasty turn. And I said, well, we should talk about this, And I was ready to go to bed. I'd been up, all day and evening. And I said, yeah, let's talk about this later in the week. We'll get together. Because we were on 4 10-hour days. And, Fridays were off. Fridays were off for us. So I was hoping we'd get together on Friday. Well, we agreed that would work. But Thursday came along. I walked in the house again Thursday evening. Again, the phone rings. Again, it's Hippie Bob. And he is extremely agitated. And I said, Bob, what's going on? And he says, I've been taken again. And I'm going like, what are you talking about? And he goes, they're coming. And I said, Bob, are you alone? He says, no, my girlfriend's here with me. I said, put her on the phone. Let me talk to her and you just calm down. Yeah. And she's panicking because she's already seen something happen to him that evening. Yeah. And she gets on the phone. She goes, who is this? And I tried to tell her who I was. I said, just hang on, let me explain. And I said, do you know Bob's been having some strange experiences? And she says, no, he's never said anything to me. And I said, well, bear with me here. And she says, he's just blacked out again. And I said, it's okay. He's going to be fine. Just bear with me. Because I know that he'd had it, being that it happened before, he'd come back okay. So I was figuring he'd be okay this time. So I'm trying to explain to her what I do and how I know Bob, and that he'd already shared with me that he had been having experiences, but they had changed on him. And I said, "What's happened? Do you know?" She said, "Yeah, we went to we play pool and darts and for a bar, and we went from different bar in competition. And the two of them, he did drive, she did, and they had gone to the first place, and they had finished the competition and were going to another place for competition. And as they were driving, she said he was in the passenger seat and he's going, 'Oh, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming.' And then he blacks out. And she said, 'I thought he was having a heart attack.' So I pulled over, was checking him. He seemed to be all right. And a couple minutes went by and he comes to, and he's like, all freaked out. And he says that, they took me. I've been gone so long. And she says, it's only been a couple minutes. And he was puzzled by that because the time seemed to be a lot longer. And whatever he'd gone through wasn't a good experience. And he's trying not to share with her, what's happened to him, because he'd be ridiculed for it. And, he wasn't sure what was happening, whether it was real or not. Well, it happened again on the way home from the second place, a second time. And that's what put him over the edge. And he called me when he got home. And right about that time, as I was finishing up with him, with his girlfriend, he comes back too. And he gets back on the phone. And I said, "Bob, you all right?" And he goes, "They're pissed at you." And I went, "What?" He said, "They're pissed at you." And I said, "Why are they pissed at me?" "Because you know what the blank is going on." I said, "Bob, have I explained to you what I've been working with?" And he goes, "Not at all. What do they know?" And I said, "We need to get together and talk about this."
Yeah.
And this was late Thursday night. And I said, "We're off tomorrow. Get some sleep. You're going to be okay. And we'll get together in the morning." And I got together with him in the morning to go over the whole experience. He was still super agitated the next morning when we went there. I had me, my girlfriend, I wasn't married at the time, my girlfriend at the time, who was working with us as an abduction investigator with us, and a good friend of mine and Bob's. Well, we're all Christians at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we all went there to listen to his story. Well, as he's telling us the story, sitting across from us, and we're talking to him, and he goes, "They're coming again." I went, "What?" He goes, "They're coming again." I says, "You can tell this?" He says, "Yes." And my girlfriend got up, went around behind him, put her hands on his shoulders, and started rebuking him and saying, "You can't have him. He's a child of God." Because we knew Bob was a Christian also.
Wow.
He was a believer. He was a Catholic, raised as a, what they called us, altar boy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a believer. He just wasn't a walk the walk believer, as we are as Christians.
Right.
But she started, claiming him for Jesus and rebuking the enemy. And it took a little bit, but all of a sudden he got this awesome smile on his face. And he calmed completely down and he goes, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Bob, we're getting ready to share with you what just happened and how you can do that."
Wow.
And after we did that and shared with him what we've been working with and what we had found recently, he no longer had these type of experiences.
Wow.
So that was a fascinating, but for me to get a message directly from them through him, that brought me straight to my knees on the phone.
Yeah.
Because I thought, this is way close to home. I wasn't expecting this type of stuff.
Yeah, right. Wow. And that's
Yeah.
incredible. So she rebuked him in the name of Jesus, and they basically left him. And
Yeah.
you taught him more about, I'm sure more about what was actually happening there, and
Yeah.
they left him alone.
Yeah. Now, see, when I first got into MUFON, I was an agnostic humanist. I was 42 when I finally gave my life to Jesus Christ, but I was only 36 when I started into MUFON, and I was nowhere near any relationship with God or Jesus or anybody else. An agnostic humanist, meaning I the world was running my life. And that's the focus that I got into MUFON with. It was kind of an accident that I even got into MUFON. It was just through picking up one book that caught my attention, and I read it, and led me down a rabbit hole. This UFO crash at Roswell, you know, and it just opened up a can of worms for me, being a sci-fi reader. And here I picked up a book that looked like sci-fi, but said it wasn't, and that's what opened me up into the whole phenomenon of UFOs. I had no interest in it up until that point. But I went into it with that perspective, the scientific perspective, the nuts and bolts perspective, and I looked at everything I dealt with from that perspective. And as I went through the process of becoming more and more involved, I realized there was also a spiritual connection to this phenomenon, which wasn't Christianity. That I ended up exploring for about 4 years, and I ended up getting caught up in it. It was the metaphysical and New Age realm. But I did see the definite connection and the reason that so many were involved in that are part of this UFO phenomenon. It's the religion for the phenomenon.
Yeah.
People go like, what? Yeah, it's totally connected. But it gave me an opportunity to look at it again from another perspective. And when I finally got to the point of being introduced to Christianity and realizing that that was the better protection from what I was dealing with here, and accepting that, and Jesus as my Lord and Savior, in 1996, no, yeah, 92 is when I started, 96 is when I became a believer. It gave me that third perspective to look at this from, now from a Christian perspective, a biblical perspective. And having the opportunity to look at this from 3 different perspectives is quite fascinating, because most researchers only get one perspective to look at it from, where I've had 3 distinct perspectives to look at this phenomenon. And it wasn't until I got to this one, as a Christian, as a believer, follower of Jesus Christ, did the answers start coming. And it was amazing how they just opened up. And, the secular researchers that are still back where I started at, they're still asking the same questions today, where we have answers for them now.
Wow. That's really fascinating. Yeah. As I was researching this whole stuff myself, the biggest surprise to me was how there's a number of, I guess, well-known people right now in the UFO, UAP is the new term, realm. And they teach you to contact these things through the New Age meditation. And
CE5.
CE5, yeah. And I was just shocked. I was like, wait a second. CE5, why are they calling meditation CE5? That's meditation according to the New Age. There's meditation, Christian meditation, and there's also meditation New Age. But the New Age meditation, empty your thoughts, empty your mind, and things like that. But I was shocked. So what you said when you said it's so tied to that New Age meditation, that really resonated with me, because it was a shocker.
Well, just to give a little explanation about what CE5 is, if you look here at CE4 Research, that's the name of the group that I have working with these abductions. CE4 represents the abduction experience. J. Allen Hynek put together the CE ratings way back during Project Blue Book, prior to Project Blue Book. And your CE1, that's simple sighting, a dot in the sky. CE2 is you got your movement and all that stuff. And then CE3 is contact. Most everybody knows Close Encounters of the Third Kind from Spielberg's movie. That's contact with an entity. And in CE4 abduction, CE5 is communication. And that's why they're using that one. And that form of communication is through the mind.
And CE stands for Close Encounter?
Close Encounter, yes. Okay. And then there's also a CE6. And CE6 deals with injury or death caused from an experience.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I should have added some more questions then. I that's really interesting. I'm gonna get sidetracked going down rabbit holes, but I that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask about not only civilian but also government, because they have had, it seems as if, at least what has been released right now, it shows a lot of government standing off of these things. And it leads me to believe, this is just speculation on my part, but it leads me to believe that there have been run-ins with these things, and they're like, whoa, whoa, let's not touch these things because they're beyond us. We don't know what's going to happen next. And so it kind of makes me wonder if there have been casualties in the past that they just don't want to talk about. But anyway, I don't want to get too speculative, but if you have any information on that, I'm all ears. That's really interesting.
There have been cases that have been documented where there have been um, injuries, illness, or death over the years on some pretty well known cases. The Cash Landrum case, for one, which goes way back. It was two ladies that had that was their last names. They had an encounter, visual encounter with a UFO um, on a road, and that close encounter left radiation type burns on them. And so
Really?
that's your injury or illness that can happen to people. Um,
Is that
we've
typical?
had no, that's not typical. Um, don't know what that was. You know, they don't have an answer for what they saw. There's a lot of speculation about that, that it possibly could have been one of something military, something special. But they don't know. Stays unidentified to this day. There have been some cases out there where death was involved. There was a researcher I came across years ago. I don't remember his name. I actually got a chance to hear his talk, where the whole thing was putting together the cases that we knew about for CE6.
Hmm.
And they're quite fascinating, but not a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the biggest effects you get from these cases, especially in the abduction realm, is you know, where they seem like they're suffering from PTSD. You
Mm,
know, the effects of something very traumatic, and you know, they have all right to be suffering from PTSD,
right.
because most of the experiences are very traumatic in the abduction realm, and
Wow.
especially to live with an experience that you were taken against your will. You remember things being done to you that were very horrible,
Yeah.
and you don't know when it's going to happen again.
Oh,
You know? So
yeah.
that's not a good thing to have to live with, you know, and not to have an answer for it or how to stop it. Um, that just makes it even worse.
So that another rabbit trail again, but that leads me to another question. When I first 10 years ago, when I first started getting into this a little bit, I experienced immediately when I started doing the research. And I'm not scared of these things. I've seen this stuff before. It's not like I was fearful of it, but at night I would start experiencing what I Googled to be sleep paralysis. When I'd wake up with something very fearful happening, but I couldn't move and do anything about it. Is this tied to any UFO phenomenon or abduction phenomenon? I guess I want to separate those two.
Yeah, it's tied hand in hand. Most of the time, people that claim an abduction experience also talk about the occurrences of sleep paralysis, either during the experience or separate by itself without an actual memory of an experience.
Hmm.
You got to keep in mind, though, you know, as a researcher, I have to look at things a little different, you know, and my profession helps me do that, because in the research, you don't jump to the most extraordinary answer first. I have to rule out whether they have medical issues, whether they have stress issues,
Mm-hmm.
whether they have um, medicinal issues, you know, legal or non legal,
Mm-hmm.
that could be driving these experiences. Or it could be you watch too much TV, you know, and you were suggested to dream of this, you
Yeah.
know, which is normal. Um, I have to look at all that and see if that's what's driving this person's memory
Mm-hmm.
of this experience. And if I get down to where it really doesn't fit any of those, then I know I've got that small percentage that needs to be dealt with.
And I think you're right. If we skip right to the paranormal, then we might miss the logical
Yes, and
conclusion.
there's a lot of logical things that can be, done for. Let me give you one example, really, really good example. Um, Back when I was a field investigator at the space, living next to the Space Center,
Hmm.
I was working at the boat company though, not working at Space Center yet. My son, who was young at the time, uh, middle school, he was playing flag football, you know, local flag football on a team, and I got to know his coach pretty good. And his coach worked at the Space Center, and we talked a little bit about what I did with the UFO stuff, and he was quite fascinated. Well, never really much happened about that until one day we showed up at practice after I got off work and after he got off work, and then they had after late afternoon practice. And I went down to the field and dropped my son off, and he come running over right away. He says, "I need to talk to you." And he says, "Let me get these guys going in their, their exercises, and I'll come talk with you." I said, "Okay." So I hung around, and he come over and he says, "We had an incident at the Space Center today during the launch. They had a launch that morning, and something was seen on video, and they shut the place down because he worked in a place where they did the tracking on video, long range cameras,
Oh,
and he said that something was seen on video, long range, and it was right after the launch. And the shuttle goes up and the boosters come off. And it was right before the tank separation.
huh.
And something came across the bottom of right across the view, the bottom of the space shuttle. Okay, space shuttle's going this way, and this thing come flying right across horizontal. And they're saying, that's not good. That's too darn close to this, you know, this big dollar, high
Yeah.
money, high risk, everything involved. So they shut everything down, grabbed that tape right away. Well, he was able to get a copy out.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, and it was VHS, and he gave me the short footage of that, and I looked at that and looked at that, and I thought, wow, this is pretty big stuff. Again, this is that special airspace that they don't want anything in because of
Right.
Challenger and Columbia and everything else. But here they had something on video.
Wow.
Well, I took that and without exposing him, I had it looked at by our leading video guy and photography guy from MUFON. And when a report finally came back, the hard analysis came back. What they were seeing was a bird up close in the focus of a long range camera,
Oh man.
and it's that simple to be fooled,
Yeah.
but it was that spectacular. This thing was actually released. It wasn't kept quiet. NASA let it out right away. The 6 o'clock news, local news that night out of Orlando, actually had the clip that I had given to me on the news, so
Oh
you could see
wow.
it. So everybody got to see this, and everybody's seeing this advertised as a UFO. But I'm the one that got the report that came back and said, nope, this is a bird at close range, super out of focus, because the cameras were focused on something miles and miles away. But it's that easy to be fooled that even those top engineers out there were fooled, for the
Wow.
moment.
Yeah, yeah. Until you get some different camera angles and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I like actually leads into my next question. What are some of the commonalities? Like if uh, I've heard and I've seen a few of your videos, you talk about and we talked about this a little bit earlier, how uh, speaking of Jesus's name is something that will stop the abduction process. Is that correct?
Yes, we found that kind of by accident. No, probably wasn't an accident if you've watched my videos. Kind of God given. When I became a believer and I was ready to put all this away because I realized that, well, God kind of showed me this was not what it appeared to be. I didn't want any part of it. I wanted to become you know, a devout believer in Jesus Christ and not dabble in these things anymore. But he had bigger plans. And Lord kind of laid on my heart, you need to take this back where you came from. Take the truth back where you came from. And I said, I can't take this back to that new age metaphysical realm. I said, they don't believe the word of God to be real. They don't believe you to be real. They think they're God, you know? I said, Lord, you got to give me something better than that, you know? And I thought I'd gotten my way out of that one. No, he's bigger than that. He said, you already have what you need. And I didn't know what that meant. So I talked to my partner, who was also a Christian, and my lead investigator for the group. And I said, what do we got here that I'm missing? He says, I don't know. Let's go back and look. So we went back and looked at some of the cases that we had on videotape that we had recorded. And sure enough, we're watching this guy that had been coming to the meetings. And he talked about being an experiencer and a UFO sighting experiencer. And he's telling us about this abduction experience. And we recorded it on tape 6 months prior to me becoming a believer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't remember hearing any of it. Neither did my partner, you know, but yet we sat right there and listened to him and recorded it. So we're watching it again, and he's telling us about this experience he had that was really horrific, where he felt like he was being held up, you know, in the air with a pole up his rectum, and it was painful. And he was just totally traumatized while it was happening. And the only thing he knew to do, because he himself had just become a believer, was do what they taught him in church.
Wow.
And call on Jesus if you ever need help. So he cries out during the experience, Jesus, Jesus, help me. And boom, he's in the bed, waking up, and the experience is abruptly stopped. And I looked at my partner and I said, did you catch that? I've never heard of that.
Uh-huh.
Because in all of our research from this leading researchers in the realm, as we studied it before we got into dealing with abductions, all of them stated that an abduction experience could not be stopped.
Wow.
So here we had one that said he had stopped it in a very unique way. So I figured I better check this out. You know, this is either not true. He's either trying to get attention or maybe it is real. So I contacted a lot of the leading researchers personally at their homes, called them up, and said, hey guys, I got this case here. Can you share it with me? And they said, sure. What do you got? I shared the story with them. And each time that I do that, they'd say, can we go off the record? And I say, sure, we go off the record. Just help me out here. And when I say off the record, it's that they're asking for anonymity.
Yeah.
Means I can't tell you who said what, but I can tell you what they said. And as a MUFON representative, we have to give anonymity when somebody asks for it. We're bound by law for that.
Yeah.
So I've never shared with who said it, but what they said was, yes, we've come across cases similar to that, where people have either, you know, hummed or sang a Christian hymn, or quoted scripture, or said the Lord's Prayer, or
Wow.
called out to Jesus, and the experience stopped.
Wow.
And I said, really? And I said, well, why is this not published? Why do you say that it's not possible to stop an experience? And this is where things got a little weird, because their answer to this was, well, we didn't know what to make of it. You know, that's a good answer. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have been fine with that, but they weren't. They had to give me another reason, like that wasn't enough. And they said we were afraid to go there because it might affect our credibility in the realm.
Wow.
And they were serious. And I understand, looking at this years later, why they were serious about that. But what are we talking about here? They know the answer, but they're not sharing it.
Yeah.
That's a cover-up.
Yeah. That's covering up.
You know, and everybody in ufology talks about the government cover-up, the government cover-up, the government cover-up. your biggest cover-ups amongst the researchers you're relying on for the truth.
Mm.
I have to tell you that. And that was
Wow.
probably one of the biggest things I found in this whole field of research is you can't trust these guys. You know, they truly have agendas. I don't have an agenda. I got a job that I work, full time. I
Mhm.
can walk away from this anytime I want. My job's going to continue. I don't rely on this to support me in any way, you know. So I have no problem sharing the truth, but obviously they do.
Is there any
And
number of cases that you've come across that you know of that have had this happen? I mean, have you counted roughly how many have cases you've come across has been able to call out the name of Jesus and has stopped?
yes, I'm well over 400 cases,
Wow.
and they're still coming in.
Wow.
Every time I do a show like this or, a documentary and somebody new sees this work, um, oh, I too have done that. Maybe I should share my testimony. So every week, every other week, I get testimonies come in. So
Wow.
my biggest question over the past 2 decades is how many of these testimonies is it going to take for you to realize that this is actually happening, that
Yeah.
people are able to stop this? And they're all been able to stop it in the same manner through the name and authority and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Now,
Oh,
I'm talking about terminating the experience. That means never happening again in your life. Okay. Not just stopping it. You can be a non believer and call on Jesus and he'll stop it.
mhm.
If you truly are asking Jesus, wholeheartedly, but you're not a follower of Jesus, he said, call on me. I'll be there for you.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, he's going to change your life when you see this happen. And you will be a follower of Jesus Christ.
Mm.
I got a lot of testimonies like that. But the interesting thing is we started building up the database of case upon case upon case, to show that what we had was something real, a piece of the puzzle that needed to be shared. Something interesting started happening. And it was back in the beginning. We probably had about 45, 50 cases up on our website at the time. And I finally got that first contact. Can you help me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was new. Uh, well, that wasn't what we had planned on doing. We had
Huh.
planned on just documenting case testimonies as researchers.
Mm.
But now I got somebody who had read the testimonies online that we were posting for everybody to see and said, I'm troubled by this too. Can you help me?
Wow.
And
Oh,
yeah. And I thought, well, I think we can. I think we've learned enough to show you what's worked for them. Um, should also work for you if you choose.
right.
So we shared with them and they did everything that the other people did. And guess what? They became a testimony.
Wow.
So what's that called? That's called repeatability.
Yes.
That's what science looks for.
Uh-huh.
There's no other repeatable event in ufology.
Huh.
Nobody has ever called a UFO in twice. But yet we're able to take evidence of somebody who has stopped the experience, terminated it from their life to a relationship with Jesus Christ, show somebody else who's still having the experience how they too can be like them, free from this in their life. They do it, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Master,
Mhm.
and it
Wow.
works for them.
Wow. Wow.
That's
Wow.
repeatability.
That's something. I can't believe. I mean, I can believe that, but it's just it blows my mind that it's a cover up. That I mean, it all depends on the person's worldview, how much information they want to share and how much they don't want to share, depending on what they think and believe or what lens they view through. That's really
Exactly.
interesting.
I can understand because I was at that place myself. When I first started out as an agnostic humanist, I didn't want to hear anything at all that had to do with spirituality. You know, I wasn't going to share any of that if I heard about it. So them still being there, I understand why they felt that way. because this is not a Christian phenomenon. This is a
Right.
phenomenon that is worldly. And for them to come out and well, I can tell you just from my testimony of dealing with this for 20 years in the UFO realm, it's not easy to get this information out.
Mm-mm.
The UFO community doesn't want to hear it.
Mm.
They really don't, because they're looking for a savior to
Mm-hmm.
come from the skies. They just don't realize he's already come.
Wow.
They didn't like
Wow.
the message of the one who came before, because the difference is of what's being offered from this phenomenon and its spiritual connection with this phenomenon is a spirituality unlike Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spirituality that these people can have because of this phenomenon. And it's a spirituality without accountability.
Yeah.
That's the seduction.
Wow. Wow. That's huge. That's exactly what's going on. A God or a savior that you're not accountable to, but that will give you everything. Is there any other commonalities? I've heard you talk about the appearance and different the way people describe these things. Like it's not always a cylinder craft as we think the news always displays. What is
Well,
the normal what do people describe when they see these things?
well, just to give you an example, I told you I get monthly reports from MUFON for reports that come in for the month. Just in the U.S. alone, we're averaging somewhere around 500 sighting reports that come into MUFON on a monthly basis.
Wow.
And then they'll break it down by state. And then they'll also have another chart that'll break it down to other countries, showing the rank all the way down to 0. And then they'll have a chart taking all of those sightings and breaking them down by shape. Okay. Now, when people think of UFOs, it's automatically UFO is related to alien spacecraft, flying saucer. How did that happen? Well, Hollywood did that to us, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that we can't identify. If you saw a flying saucer, oh, excuse me, but that's identified.
Yeah.
That's not unidentified. You may not know where it's from, but you're identifying an actual defined shape,
Right.
which that's going to get some good investigation. When you look at the reports that I get, out of 500 reports, I think last month when I looked at it, it was like 66 of the 500 were described as being saucer shaped. So there's a whole lot of other that come first.
Yeah.
And the first one being a glowing round object, like a fireball or whatever,
Huh.
and then it'll go to a sphere, and and it'll stay in that type of category until it gets down the line to where you got those 66 out of the majority that people said they claimed it looked like a saucer.
Huh.
But even that is easy to. I you know I used to collect pictures and show them at my meetings. I used to have monthly meetings when I was there in Florida. It's one of the requirements of a state section director to have monthly meetings open to the public, share with them what we're doing. And it's also for recruiting purposes too, to get members into MUFON. But I used to take a lot of pictures and collect a lot of pictures that people took to share them, to show them what people are experiencing and misidentifying. It doesn't take much to to take a picture of a bird with wings tucked behind it, just zipping through the air from a side view at a high speed. So right away, your camera's going to fuzz the picture.
Mm-hmm.
But from a side view at a distance and you blow it up with your fingers on your phone, yeah, it looks like a disc. That's how simple things can be, confused.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. If you look at an airplane from a great distance with the sun shining on it, reflecting on it really bright, and it's flying straight horizontal across you, you can't see the wings because they're level with the plane. You barely see the tail because the fuselage is glowing
Yeah.
so bright. You
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, flying disc, look at that, unidentified. And at a great distance, even though the plane's traveling 400 plus miles an hour, it looks like it's sitting still.
Yeah.
So a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even those claims of seeing a flying disc, probably not a high percentage of those was really a flying disc.
What about, so are there any other commonalities you've seen over the years looking at these reports, or that have been said to you through other directors, or I don't know what you call the people that actually go out and do the investigation? Have they said anything that is peculiar commonality?
Yeah, there is. And that's one I look for big time. And I think that you're starting to see it here now with these new reports coming out. You're starting to see it kind of tie in. And I'm glad it is, because people didn't know what to make of the phenomenon in the earlier years. It goes back to an English researcher named Jenny Randles, back to about 1995, 1996. She was seeing some similarities between cases that she didn't understand and didn't know why they were happening and didn't know what to call it. And the term she put on it is the Oz factor. And the reason that she used that is its similarity to Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Okay. And what I'm trying to describe here to you that she was seeing, and I actually interviewed two gentlemen in Florida, two country boys fishing, had seen something, and they were very disturbed about the sighting. And I realized it wasn't what they saw that was disturbing them. It was what they experienced when they saw it that was disturbing them. And I had to ask the right questions to get them to come out with it. And then when I did, they were like, they were tongue tied. But what's happening here is when people have a sighting, close up sighting of a craft or entities, and things change in their environment. In other words, it's like all of a sudden they're in this time distortion bubble.
Yes.
And things kind of stand still. Time slows way down and totally silent. Give you an example, those two guys fishing, been fishing out there for a few hours, drinking beers, typical country boys, right near I-95 at their favorite fishing hole. Well, I-95 is heavy traffic. You've been around traffic, you know that it's noisy. And here you are in Florida in a swamp area fishing. There's also cicadas. They're noisy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But here comes this object in view of them and hovers up over above them, and it catches their attention. And all of a sudden they realize that things seem a little weird. There's no sound, period. Everything is like it's standing still. And that's something that's very unusual for a human to experience, especially when it's not natural to us. That's what was upsetting them. And they didn't know what that was.
Wow.
And they were very disturbed by living that experience. It was almost like having an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
What people talk about. Well, that's just the example I'm familiar with that I had firsthand, interview with. But what Jenny Randles was talking about was very similar amongst many cases. There's one that happened in 1994, I believe it was, in Zimbabwe at a school in Africa, where over 100 middle school students, elementary and middle school students on a playground encountered a craft with two beings. And if you listen to their testimonies, even now as an adult, where they can really describe it to you,
Yeah.
you will see every aspect of the Oz factor in that
Really?
experience. Because one of the girls that is doing her talk now, when she talks about seeing the entities way at the end of the playground and the shining object that they were next to, she's watching them, and then all of a sudden, the entity moves closer and moves closer. Didn't get to see him move at all. He just appeared and appeared. And then
Wow.
everything was totally silent. She says it was eerily strange, like it was silent and time wasn't there. And then there was communication between the entity and her through the mind.
Telepathy.
And
Yeah.
so this is that Oz factor. You're there, but you're somewhere else at the same time.
Huh.
This is why she named it the Oz factor, because when Dorothy went to Oz, okay, and lived that whole experience with the short people and the witches and
Uh-huh.
all that stuff and the wizard and where was she the whole time?
Yeah. I don't remember the end of the story, but I'm imagining in her bed or
She
near.
was sleeping in the bed.
Yeah,
She
right.
wasn't really there. Okay. This is why the strangeness, she called it the Oz factor. You're
Huh.
there, but you're not really there, Yeah. Uh,
Wow.
what we're seeing now in the description of this, let's just take the one object called the Tic Tac.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying for that thing to have the ability that it does, to defy physics in the way that it does, and I've heard him say it right on his interviews, Louis Elizondo,
Mm-hmm.
it would have to be in some time temporal bubble.
Wow.
They know.
Yeah. Wow.
So that Oz factor, it's tying back in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with what they're seeing now.
So that actually brings me to my next question. You talked about the kids in Zimbabwe, right? The kids or the teachers or someone was given a message. Do you know of anything in your MUFON reports that talks about common messages that these things are trying to give humanity?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of common ones. The main common ones being about we're ruining our planet, and you know they're here to help us fix that, or we can't move on until we correct ourselves and take care of this planet, or you know something to that effect. They give end time scenarios, doomsday scenarios.
Hmm.
A lot of the messages have come out to where a certain percentage of humanity will be rescued to the ships before the destruction of the earth and then repopulated to start humanity over again. Um, but they never lifted a finger to help us,
No, it's like, well, help us now.
Exactly. And the other strange communication with all of this, and you see a lot of it too, is the messages are anti-God,
Yep.
anti-creation, anti-Christ, anti-Bible, anti-Christianity. And to me as a researcher, that's a red flag,
Yeah.
because why would beings come from vast distances across the universe to this little rock in space to preach a gospel that is against one belief system,
Yes.
when there are so many different belief systems on this planet? But I gotta correct that. There really is only two belief systems on this planet. The one that believes in Jesus Christ as Lord and Master and God come in the flesh, and all the others that don't. But one thing about all those others that don't, they're all acceptable in the New Age metaphysical realm. Because why? They all have the same thing in common. They're Antichrist also.
Mm-hmm.
So they come all the way here to bash Christianity. That's a red flag. That doesn't make sense.
No, that's not logical.
It isn't. It doesn't fit any reasoning at all. So if they're here to make sure that one's shown to be incorrect, must be something needs to be looked at about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So is there any evidence that UAPs seem to be pre-selecting their observers? Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of curious about that. Like, are there any similarities between those who have experienced these things and that have come and talked to MUFON, I guess?
Well, that takes us to the question that the secular realm is still asking today. Why does this happen to certain people?
Mm.
Well, in our research, CE4 research group's research findings, we found 3 answers, not just one. It can be one or a combination of the 3. The first one, you asked for it. And you're thinking, well, people ask for this? Yeah, they do. People are curious. People hear about it, see about it. They say, man, I wish I could find out what that was about. I'd like to see something.
Oh,
Be very careful what you ask for.
yeah.
I was one of those people. I used to hang my head out the window coming back from UFO meetings going, please show me something. You know, I'm chasing you guys around like chasing my tail, but I give up. Show me something.
No.
That's another story. But number 2 is we came across people who unknowingly opened themselves up to this experience. And how did they do that? The commonality is they were involved with either the aspects of the occult, the New Age, the metaphysical realm.
Mm-hmm.
In specific, anything that God said, don't mess with, they've been messing with.
Oh, interesting.
And there seemed to be that same connection. I could take it back to when they did that by questioning them. We go back to look where the open door was,
Mm-hmm.
so we can show them what happened and help them close that door.
Wow.
And that seems to be the largest number of people fit into that category that are experiencers.
And what is go ahead.
The third one puzzled us. The third one came when people started telling me that they don't fit the first 2 because they were just children at the time. They remember having experiences, as far back as they can remember, 6, 7, 8 years old. And I said, okay, you're right. That doesn't fit the first 2. So what makes that happen? Well, I thought about it a while, prayed over it a long while, and then Lord took me to some scriptures to where I go, okay, I got this. Now I got to show the rest of the world.
Mm.
So I went back and re-interviewed a lot of the experiencers. Whole different set of questioning. What was your family life like? Do you remember? What were your parents involved in? Were your parents godly people? What did they do? What were their hobbies?
Yeah.
The open door was with the parents.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So this idea of keeping a godly covering over your family is all real. You bring those things into your household, the rest of your household is susceptible to it too.
Wow. Wow. It affects generations. Wow.
That's how it continued through generations.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the secular research realm is looking for genetic connection, blood work connection, something that makes it go through that generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's upbringing, it's social environment that's got them locked in. But, that doesn't make any difference because once you're free from this experience through learning the truth and through a relationship with Jesus Christ, it's not going to continue. It's not going to continue in your children and their children, unless they open it up. But it's not going to come from you.
Have you ever heard of I've heard this from different stories. Not only, well, number one, you rebuke it in the name of Jesus Christ. It will go away. But I've also heard that if you have things in your house that pertain to this demonic activity, such as Ouija boards or spell books or things like that, you're told to get rid of those things because they have some jurisdiction over the property. Have you heard anything like this, or is this total crock?
I don't believe in that the items have jurisdiction. I believe that if it's in your household, that it's still a temptation to you.
Ah, that makes sense.
And let me give you, for instance, um, I've talked in a lot of churches and I've talked at youth groups. Well, when I talk to a youth group, I got to bring the level down a little bit for them to understand. So, what I try to do on this particular subject, this part of the subject, to answer that, is I try to get the pastor or the youth pastor to make sure there's a door nearby. And when I get to this point about open doors, I'll open the door up and I'll go, all right, can anybody tell me what this is? And they're all looking at me like, this guy's crazy. But there's that one little geeky kid in the back that goes, yeah, that's an open door. Correct. And that's how the enemy gets into your life.
Mm-hmm.
You opened it up to him. Okay. You opened the door. And I said, now what's this? And I close the door, but I leave my little finger in it. I said, now what's this? And they're all like, guy's really crazy. But there's that one geeky kid again. He goes, that's still an open door. I'm going, you're right. And then I'll slam it shut. So you hear a loud bang. I say, that's a closed door. That's what you have to do with all these things that brought you into this in the first place.
Wow.
Any dabbling you continue to do is going to continue to give these entities a right to mess with you.
Yeah. And I think you answered some of these questions already, but have you ever seen reports or stories about non-human occurrences like animal deaths or mutilations, sunburns, health side effects, radioactivity? These may indicate some things that may indicate that these things are not malevolent.
Yes, and there's a lot of those. A lot of the abduction experiencers will wake up with strange marks on them. Some of them even claw-like marks, after an experience. A lot of physical trace evidence, supposedly, which gets us into a whole nother area. You talk about going down rabbit holes, it's just one after another in this field. But the whole idea of, is this a physical object or not? Is the abduction experience a physical, I'm taken somewhere experience or not? What is it? Well, I can give you some input on our findings into that. Looking at it on the abduction side, I have a lot of even fellow Christian researchers that keep telling me, don't close the door on this being a physical experience. And I'm saying, I'm closing it because I don't see anything that says leave it open.
Mm-hmm.
In my research, I had to finally get a handle on that one because people actually believed that they were getting taken somewhere to a physical craft and actual things actually physically done on them. I'm going to, the evidence just isn't there. And then working with my long-term friend and peer, also a Christian, Gary Bates. He's the CEO of Creation Ministries International out of Georgia. He wrote the book Alien Intrusion back in 85, 95, 95? No, 2005. That's when it was, 2005. I worked with him at the end of that on there. He's actually got a chapter on my testimony in there. But he saw something in there that caught his attention. And what he said was, there's an awful strong similarity to the person's testimony of an experience and somebody who's just come out of stage hypnosis on a stage setting. with somebody who does stage hypnosis.
Yeah.
They kind of explain the experience in the same manner. So we started exploring that a little bit, and I went back and started, again, reinvestigating some of my cases. And I said, I don't want to relive your experience like I did before. I don't want to talk about where this came from. We're going to relive the experience in a different manner. I'm going to ask more questions instead of just listening to you tell a story. So as they started talking, I would say, they give a description on where they're at. And I'd say, well, what do you see to the right? What do you see to the left? What did you smell? Do you feel any temperature change? Asking them questions they should have been able to answer if they were there.
Right.
In other words, if I asked you about your last birthday, you know where you were at. You remember your last birthday. Most of the things you remember are the sensational things that you want to remember. But the whole day is there. All I have to do is ask you the right questions. I do not use hypnotherapy, never have. I just know how to ask the right questions. Same thing I do in my profession for safety, trying to get to a root cause for an accident. Ask the right questions. Go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. When I did this with these experiencers, so many answers weren't there. The reason they weren't there is because they didn't happen. In other words, what we were seeing here was like if you went to a Broadway play and you're watching a Broadway play and the scene that you're watching is a living room scene. So the playwright, he has certain objects placed on the stage for you to realize from the audience, oh, this is the living room scene. There's a couch, there's a chair, there's an end table, there's a lamp, there's a picture on the wall. This is a living room scene. That's all it took for you to realize that. Okay? The same thing happens with the abduction experience. Only enough sensational things are placed in the experience in here for you to believe that it actually happened.
Wow.
Along with horrific experience.
Right.
Pain, fear, all the things that drive it home so you don't question the details. Because when you question the details, they're not there. Secular realm hypnotherapists will tell you, oh, it's not there because they put a mind block on them. No, that's not what happened. It isn't there because it didn't happen. Hypnotherapists want to try and tell you that what you're experiencing when you talk and you're under hypnotic regression is actually what happened. No, that's not. It's not even accepted in court of law. There's a reason for that because it's fallible.
Right.
But you will remember things that really did happen to you if you're asked the right questions. And the right counselors can do that with you. Investigators can do that with you. Well, that's when I realized this is all a visionary experience. The question is, once you accept that, is this is like a play. Who's the playwright? And that's when you got to start looking at the whole picture. What's the message? What's the activity? What's the outcome? Every aspect of it was pointing to something evil, wicked, mean, and nasty.
Yes.
And as a Christian, we know what that is.
Right.
Now you take it a step farther. Let's go back to the UFO side of it and the UAP side of it. Things that defy physics. What else could defy physics?
Exactly.
Christians know them to be angelic hosts. One of the best descriptions, and this is what's called a heavenly body in Christian terminology.
Yep.
We're all going to receive heavenly bodies at some point. Our physical bodies at the resurrection are not going to heaven.
Right.
We're going to be transformed in the twinkling of an eye into our heavenly bodies. Who else had a heavenly body that we know about?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Jesus did
Jesus did.
after he was developing his heavenly body after the resurrection. Look very carefully to what scripture's telling you about him after the resurrection.
Hmm.
Okay. He's no longer in that physical human body form.
Hmm.
He's in his resurrected, working on heavenly body. Because when he lifted up, his physical body's not what lifted up. He was already in his heavenly body.
Hmm.
Remember, he warned them about touching him.
Hmm.
He was able to walk through walls. He was able to appear here and then appear over there.
Hmm.
Okay? Does this sound familiar?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those things the Navy is filming? Also having that time distortion bubble where
Yep.
it says, don't touch me. He eventually did let Thomas touch him.
Hmm.
Look at the aspects of angels in scripture. They
Hmm.
appeared and then they disappeared.
Yes.
When they appeared, they were short periods of time. Even Jesus was only here a short period of time after he resurrected from the tomb. They don't have the ability to stay here long. These are
Hmm.
manifestations of a spiritual entity. Okay. What the secular realm is calling interdimensional, coming into our physical realm. They're
Wow.
speaking our language, just with a little bit different terminology.
Hmm.
But never in history do I believe that we have been closer to witnessing to the lost than now,
Right.
because our language is so close.
Hmm.
They are already accepting things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
They are already accepting the paranormal,
Oh man.
supernatural.
Let me tell you. Can I tell you just a short story? I mean, I,
Sure.
I promised I wouldn't make this about me, but I wanted to know more about your MUFON things. But I was amazed as I'm getting into this. I'm joining a few UFO groups on Facebook, and I'm trying to learn the terminology and really get into it and understand it. And I came across every once in a while, I'll see a question that comes across. It says, this one person asked, "What are demons?" They said, "What are these things that's because there have been some Christians that have come into the UFO realm and said, hey, you know what? Maybe these are, or here's a link to this." And I have been doing that a little bit too. But I was shocked, and so I started conversing with these people. These people want to believe. They want
Yes.
something to believe in, and
Yes.
and sometimes they just don't know the difference between them, and they legitimately are searching for something to hold on to. And that's what's fascinating to me about this whole thing.
I don't like to bash the American church or Western church in any way, but I have to say that we've missed the point for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We're missing the point on an opportunity to reach these people because they are looking for something. This subject has been ridiculed for so many years. And anybody that talks about having an experience gets immediate ridicule. And especially coming from the church, somebody to try to go into the church and say, help me, I've had these horrible experiences. Oh, you're dealing with demons, or you're crazy, go away. They don't know how to handle them.
Yeah.
They've never been taught what this really is or how it works or how do you deal with these people. That's what we're trying to do with CE4 research. We believe that we are at a point right now where, with what we've learned in this research for 27 years, we can take to the church and educate the church to be able to use this information as probably one of the most powerful witnessing tools they've ever had their hands on.
Wow.
Because, like you said, these people are looking for hope.
Yes.
It's just that what they're missing here is, you know, sadly to say, a lot of people have been turned off by a church experience,
Mm-hmm.
a religious experience, should I say. And I say religious because I'm not talking about, you know, man-made religion,
Mm-hmm.
Christianity that's had a man's spin put on. I'm talking about what God says. What does God say in his word? You know, we shouldn't be bashing these people for what they're involved in. We should be giving them an opportunity to understand there's something else that's better. There's something else that maybe they should look at here. That maybe what you're dealing with is not what you think it is. And that's kind of the approach that we try to do. When I work with people brand new in this realm that come to me, I don't come right out and say, hey, this is demonic. You've been dealing with demons, and you're doomed to hell. I mean, they're going to figure that out eventually. What I do is I bring up the red flags of ufology. I mentioned that before. You bring up enough red flags to where they start going, well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense either. What am I believing in? It makes them doubt what they've taken hold of as a belief system. And it makes them stand back and go, yeah, this ain't right at all. What do you have? And when you get them to that point where they ask you, what do you got? Now you got their ear. Now you have an opportunity to say, hey, let me show you what we found. I'm going to let you make the decision what you think this is. And when I lay out the red flags and lay it all lined up for them, what's the word that comes out of their mouth? Not mine, but theirs. This is demonic.
Wow.
I didn't say that. You did. Because how can they even say that if they're not believers in Jesus Christ or Christianity? Because everybody knows about Jesus Christ. Everybody knows about demons. And where did they get that from? Hollywood.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
No, we talk about this in different circles about, is there anybody out there that doesn't know who Jesus Christ is? I really don't think so. I think it's a matter of whether you choose to follow him or not. Mm-hmm. And these people have chosen not. I was one of those. I chose not. Why did I choose not? Because I said it earlier, that accountability factor.
Yeah.
Don't make me quit smoking my dope. Don't make me quit drinking. I don't want to do that. I want to keep it up. But can't I have both? The New Age says you can, because those are just experiential things.
Yeah.
Part of life, Here, take the ayahuasca and the DMT while you're at it.
Chris Millen says that he's one of the government officials that has, I don't know if he's left or if he's still a part of it, but he's one of Lou Elizondo's friends. He's mentioned that the UAP activity has been increasing and getting more bold. Do you notice, and maybe I'm asking the wrong person because you're in South Korea now and they don't have as much going on down there, but have you heard anything about what he said about this activity increasing at all?
That's a difficult question to answer. I can answer it, but it's difficult on how it's answered. Yes, it's increasing. The numbers show it. We went from, before all this really hit the press, we were averaging maybe 300, 325, maybe 350 reports a month in the U.S. Now we're upwards of 600 a month in the U.S. because of its visibility. Okay. And that's just the U.S. Other countries are having increases too. Like I said, the Western modernized countries. Korea, I wouldn't classify as, it's modernized, but not fully and not Westernized. Believe me, they want to be their own style. Definitely their own style. But yeah, the question is, why are they up?
Yeah.
Because people want to be somebody and now they want to report something every time they see it, which remember, 98% is just misidentified. Or is the activity actually increased? Probably a little bit of both. Because remember, if this is coming from an open door, you ask for it. And of course it's going to increase because the more you hear about it, the more you want to know about it. So, like I said, probably a little bit of both, but it is higher.
Fascinating. And so this is the second to last question. Last question is probably one of my favorite, but um, this second to last question is a two question, but it's the same question. I'll explain why. Through solely evidence-based reasoning and without any opinions or worldview changing your opinion, what do you see as the end goal of these things? And the second question is the same. Through your own personal opinion, what is the end goal of these things?
So the first one, I got to go back to my first perspective and look at it as a scientific point of view.
Yeah.
No idea. Nobody does. The biggest question is, should we be in fear of it?
Mm. Is it national security issue? Yeah.
Yeah, it could be on that level, from a secular level. If it's something that we can't protect ourselves from, yeah, it can be really scary. It could turn real nasty and we can't do anything about it. But looking at it from a Christian perspective,
Right.
we know what this is.
Right.
We know it was prophesied.
Mm-hmm.
We know the outcome. And we know what it does to people. And what we have found the purpose of this to be in every aspect is anybody who opens themselves up to this phenomenon, even in just curiosity, it leads their eyes away from the one true God.
Right.
That is the total outcome of this phenomenon. Devout believers have walked away from their belief in Jesus Christ because they got too deep into this phenomenon.
Wow.
Because they weren't given the answers that they should have been given.
Wow.
They didn't know where to go for the answers. They didn't know that there were answers. And I'm telling you, we got answers.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to us. We're trying to share them. They're there. The other aspect of this is, I said it was prophesied. 2 Thessalonians 11 and 12. And the purpose of this phenomenon, of this end time delusion, is to separate those from God who chose the lie.
Mm.
He's offering the lie in a way that it's so powerful that you're either going to choose the lie or choose God. There's not going to be a middle walk.
Right.
This is dividing of the wheat from the chaff.
Wow. Wow.
This is a soul breaker.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to cost you eternity.
Mm-hmm.
This phenomenon, one way or the other. Either you're going to come to the truth on it and you're going to be fine and grounded in a relationship with Jesus, or you're not. That's the outcome of this phenomenon. Now, is that a national security threat?
It is certainly a threat to those who want to remain on this earth.
Exactly.
Hmm.
This is a whole lot bigger than little nasty gray aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
A whole lot bigger. And you know what? You thought they were scary? Eternal damnation is really scary.
Yeah. So this is the last question. What are some questions that you wish someone would ask, or some important questions that people should be asking, and what are the answers? I think we went over one of the most important questions already, but can you think of anything that would be an important question that has been brought up in another interview, or a very thought-provoking question that needs an answer that people need to hear?
The biggest one that needs to be asked right now, especially after you've heard this, what can I do to help?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't walk away from this. Why do I say that? Because you may not be affected by this, You may think, I got nothing to do with this. This doesn't bother me, doesn't affect me. I don't deal with this stuff. Yeah, but your sons and daughters might be, your nieces and nephews might be, even your parents might be. And this could be their eternal damnation. And you're sitting on the truth because you've just now got it. You know what this is. I'm giving you the evidence for it, the tools to be able to share it in every aspect. It's all free. We got it on our website. We've got a book out there that's got the whole thing spelled out. 60 plus testimonies in there to back it up as evidence to show somebody everything you need to help those people, your family and your friends, from being deceived is in your hands. What are you going to do with it? When are you going to ask, how can I help? That's the question that needs to be asked.
Absolutely.
I can't do this by myself. I've reached many, many, many people over 20 some years, but there's a world of people in hurt. There's a world of people being deceived by this. And the more it comes out in the press, the more the governments talk about it, the more are going to be deceived. This delusion is called the strong delusion for a reason. This is not just going to be a fly-by-night event.
Right.
This is going to be an end of life event.
Right. End of all things. Man, wow. Well, I am thrilled to speak with you on this show. It's really is a pleasure, and I thank you so much for
Sure.
spending your time, your day going and talking to me and all the other people that are watching this channel. Thank you so much. And where can we find you if we wanted to get a hold of your resources, or if we wanted to watch your program?
Real simple. My website is ce4research.com. Just like that, ce4research.com. And it'll take you to a brand new website that I've been working on. I'm transferring all the testimonies from the old site over to this one. I've got a lot more links of peers that are working with me that you can go see and see their work into this too. Fascinating information that I've now got on this new website. Our new book, Piercing the Cosmic Veil, You Shall Not Be Afraid of the Dark, the Terror by Night. Like I said, this is a thick one. It's got 60 plus never before shown testimonies that I put in the book. You can get this on Amazon, either in this giant paperback or in Kindle form if you want. Contact me personally. If you want to help, talk to me. I will teach you how to help other people come out of this. And you want to be busy doing something? You'll be busier than you could ever imagine, because there are millions and millions and millions of people that need to hear this truth and this evidence for what it is. Reach me at ce4president@yahoo.com. Even though I'm in Korea, drop me an email. I will talk to you. If you are having these experiences, these abduction experiences, and you haven't stopped them, you need help. Get a hold of me. I'll work with you one-on-one. If you have stopped these experiences through the name and authority of Jesus Christ, the world needs to hear your testimony.
Yes.
Because how are the lost to come to the truth? Through the word of God and your testimony. Okay? The testimonies of these people's lives changed through a relationship in Jesus Christ from this horrible experience is the most powerful evidence in the world today of what's behind this phenomenon. And there's never enough testimonies for some people. So bring them in. Let's keep them coming in. And that's a tool for you to use to reach the next person. YouTube channels, I got 2 of them. We have a podcast that I need to get back up and running. I've just been busy trying to work on a couple projects, but we'll get the podcast back up. It's on YouTube. It's called Alien Intruders Dash Piercing the Cosmic Veil Show. And then I have a CE4 Research YouTube channel, which is just loaded with videos. All my talks over the years that I've ever videoed and filmed are up there free for you to see. My presentations from Roswell and everywhere else are up there. Interviews like this that I do, I post them up there on the YouTube channel so everybody can see them. They're not all identical because I never prepare a talk. I let the Holy Spirit do it because he knows who's listening. I don't. And every talk is a little bit different because he knows who needs to hear what. So lot to have at your fingertips out there. You know, you can spend eternity looking on the internet at all this crazy stuff, but I've got a wealth of information that'll teach you how to help people and, you know, how to turn this lie around, you know, and bring people to the truth in a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you for asking the question.